Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another knitting or making podcast. Today I have a bunch of finished objects. As you can see here behind me, these are all finished objects. So it has been quite a productive month since I last saw you. I think it has been about 4 weeks probably. Then I also have some works in progress, of course. Then I also acquired some really fun and exciting things that I will show you at the end of this video. So let's just get started. So if you're new here on the channel, my name is Famke. I'm a part-time knitwear designer and I also work part-time in a fabric store. You can also find me on Instagram at @maybe_the_label. So if you see anything that you'd like, you can best follow me over there to keep up with pattern updates, etc. Firstly, I always like to quickly mention what I'm wearing because I do sometimes get questions about it. So this is my Bloom Bubble Slip Over. This is my own pattern design that I actually just released, I think a few days ago. By the time that this video comes online, the discount will not be available anymore, but I think I'm going to extend it for a few days for my YouTube friends. So you can get 20% off with the code HelloBloom for a couple of extra days. Just if you're not watching my other videos or anything, or you're not following me on Instagram, then you can also enjoy the discount for the release. So that is what I'm wearing today. And let's get started with the first finished object, which is my Bliss Broderie top. It now has a name. I did show you this in my last knitting podcast, and I think at that time it didn't have any straps, but now it does. So it makes it look a lot more finished than it did back then. And also honestly looks a little bit ugly as a strapless top. So this is how that top looks. I knit this in a really fun yarn. This is, I think, around 50% cotton and then 50% bamboo. This yarn is from Zeeman, which is a Dutch store. But I like a bamboo and cotton blend because it's just a little bit softer and smoother than a regular cotton. And the bamboo gives it a lot of drape as well. And also a little bit of shine. So just very fancy looking, even though it's very affordable, if that makes sense. So the straps that I added have these really beautiful crochet scalloped edge, which I just think is a very lovely detail. And this one is definitely also quite a unique design with this garter stitch waist. And this pattern does come with 12 sizes rather than my usual 10 sizes. And then I also added 3 options for shaping. So you can do a top without shaping, which is what I have here. So it's just straight up and down. But then you can also do waist shaping, and you can also add extra increases to not have waist shaping, but to have a rapid decrease to the waist section. So it kind of creates like a poofy top. And I always love having multiple versions in my pattern. So I'm very excited that I was able to do that with this pattern as well. The top is knit on 3.5mm needles, which I think is a really nice needle size for a summer top. And I also just like that it has extra wide straps, so you don't really have to worry about the bra that you're wearing, because I just think that's a really big downside to summer tops, is that usually you have to wear something strapless or even go braless, which is just not the best thing for everyone, I think. So that was my first finished object, and now I have this really fun one that I knit for a YouTube video, the one that I posted last week. So this is the peacock scarf by Knit. I mean, I'm saying I knit it for a video, but I also wanted to knit this because basically as soon as this pattern was released or shared on her Instagram, I just fell in love with the design and I knew that I wanted to knit it, which usually honestly doesn't happen to me very often, that I get the intense urge to want to cast something on. So I really fell in love with this scarf. This is the smallest size, so it's quite small, but it ties around my neck pretty perfectly. Then I knit this with a DK weight yarn. So this is Scheepjes Woolwijs, which is a non-superwash 100% merino wool. And it comes in balls that are 100 grams, so they have around 200 meters. Which is perfect for a project like this because I did end up using 60 grams. So I can just use the leftovers for either my sweet shop blanket or something else. And of course I could have made it bigger, but I felt like this was a nice size right now. And I did knit this in one day as well. So I think maybe I was just feeling lazy. And as you can see, I have also been influenced in trying out the butter yellow. And I did predict this actually in my knitting trends for 2025. I said that butter yellow was going to be pretty big this year, and it is. Like, I'm seeing it everywhere, and so I also had to knit something in this color. And if you're also on the fence maybe about this trend, I mean, I'm not really on the fence, I love this color. But if you just want to dabble in the butter yellow trend, then I think a little neck scarf like this is a perfect way to just try it out. If you're not a fan of this color around your face, you can also just tie it on your bag. That would be really cute as well. Or maybe even put it in your hair or something like that. I think a little scarf like this has a lot of possibilities. I feel like I know why people are always drinking tea during their videos. It's just because you get a really scratchy throat from just talking to yourself for 10 minutes. The next up we have a little bit of a weird pattern and something that I have never knit before, and also that I was not really planning on knitting. But if you follow me on Instagram, or also if you have seen my community post, I think from a few weeks ago, I shared that I was considering getting a puppy. Because my boyfriend's family, they were looking at a puppy, and suddenly I had a really impulsive idea that it would be really fun if we also got a puppy from the same nest, so that they would be brother and sister, and I just thought that would be really fun. So we were really seriously considering it, and for some reason I also was able to get my boyfriend on board, because my boyfriend was always saying that he didn't want to get a dog because we do live in a studio apartment that is 30 square meters for reference. So I know that a dog is not the best idea for a small space like this, but we were actually gonna do it. But then I kind of made up my mind, and it was a little bit impulsive and financially maybe also not the best decision for us at the time, because we're also saving up for a car and I don't even have my driver license. There are a lot of things that we're trying to save up for. So we ended up not getting the dog, but of course my boyfriend's family did get their puppy, which is still really fun and exciting, and also for us to practice with, so we can also walk him and just see how things are with a puppy, because I've never really experienced a puppy either in my life. But I did then cast on a dog sweater, is what I'm trying to say, because I think we are going to get a dog eventually. Probably one that doesn't shed as much, and most dogs that don't shed only have one layer of fur, I believe is how you explain it. So they get cold a little bit more easily. So of course I had to knit a dog sweater, because I'm not gonna pay 30 euros for a dog sweater when I can just knit one. So this is the Winter Awakens pattern by Drops Design, so it's a free pattern. And I knit this with a hand-dyed yarn from Wilmette Verve, which was a fingering weight superwash sock yarn. And then I held it with some Drops Flora that I had in stash. So this was a really scrappy project just with leftovers. And I just think it looks really fun how all of these colors are now molded together. So this is the size. I think I knit the size medium, which they say is for a Bichon Frise, I think is how you pronounce it, which is also a small dog breed. I think the dog that we would get eventually one day, I don't know when it's going to happen, would be of a similar size. So that's why I decided to knit this size, and just look how cute that's going to look like. With the little legs sticking out. I don't know, it's just too cute. And I only made one adjustment from the original pattern, and that is that in the pattern they have you bind off stitches here to create the shape that it has on the bottom. And from the Ravelry project pages that I could see, that didn't look very nice, so I decided to do decreases instead and then start the bind off right here. So as you can see, that just made a more natural curved edge rather than something that is like a staircase basically. So I just think that looks a little bit nicer, and it is a pretty easy adjustment to do. And this is also, by the way, as you can see, super stretchy, and this is unblocked. I don't know when someone is going to be wearing this, but hopefully one day there will be a dog inside this. And for now I already have knit it, so I don't have to stress knit it when the time comes. Then next up we have a cardigan design that I also showed in my last knitting podcast. I finally have finished this because I don't know, it was lingering, waiting for me to finish that last sleeve. I did finish the neckline, etc. And of course, as always, it's just that final sleeve that is bugging me and that is getting at me, and that I just didn't want to finish it. But I decided to get over myself and just knit it, so now it's finished. And I'm very pleased with it. So this is the Bambi Bow Cardigan. As you can see, it is a cardigan with bows on the front. And it's also my first time knitting a saddle shoulder. So it has this lace panel on the shoulder that then continues in the sleeve, which is just a really fun detail. Then this cardigan is knit on 5mm needles with some new to me yarn. So this is Gabo wool. This is the My Time Merino held together with the Eco Colorful Brushed, which is a 100% alpaca lace weight yarn. So I thought to myself when I saw this in store that that could not possibly be a nice fabric on 5mm needles. But the store that I bought it at, which was Helene Design in Alsmeer, actually had a sample in their store that was knit on 6mm needles, and it still created a really beautiful and plush fabric, and definitely not as opaque as you would think when you're holding a fingering weight yarn together with a lace weight yarn. So I decided to knit this sample on 5mm needles, and I think it just created a really beautiful fabric, and it's not see-through at all. It still feels nice and thick, not too thin, and I just think it's really beautiful. And it does have some nice details, like the neckline, for example, is inspired by actually the Bloom Bubble slip over that I'm wearing, where I also did ribbing with then an I-cord and a little bow here at the armpit. So this is a similar thing where you have the ribbed neckline with the I-cord ties at the top. And I just think this is a very fun cardigan. The color is also very different for me. I don't really have anything in this color, but I'm definitely expanding my colors more lately. Definitely not as drawn to pink as I usually am, which is a really good thing, as you have probably seen already in this video that I have a bunch of different colors that I'm working on. So it's very exciting to bring something new in my wardrobe, and I'm happy that I finished it actually this morning. So now I can just block it and then I can wear it already. Then we have 3 more finished objects, which are all crochet objects, because I have been on a crochet phase. I already talked about it in my last ending podcast, but this month we have a lot of finished objects because of that. So the first finished object that I have is a crochet bag, which I designed and made because I'm going to be selling crochet kits together with my boyfriend on my Etsy. So I'm going to be designing all of the patterns and making the video tutorial, but my boyfriend is going to be helping me with all of the other things. So I don't know when these kits are actually going to be online, hopefully by the time maybe that this video comes online. So this bag is made on a 4.5mm crochet hook with some cotton yarn from Scheepjes, which is the Callista. So this is an Aran weight cotton yarn, and this is definitely some of the softest cotton yarn that I've ever worked with. I'm also actually working on another project right now with Drops Paris, which is also a Aran weight cotton yarn, and just the feel and the look of the fabric is completely different. So the Scheepjes Callista is twice as expensive, but in my opinion it's completely worth it. And I actually just ordered like a quantity to make a matching skirt with a matching top, because I love the yarn that much, and I think for a garment it's just going to be perfect. So yeah, I made this little bag. It is going to be a video tutorial as well, and everybody's going to be able to just watch it on the channel for free. So if you also want to make it, then you can get your own yarn and watch the video, but you can also support us and our business by purchasing a kit. Then the next finished object that I have is a really beautiful cardigan. So this is the Shell Cardigan by You Makes. This is a designer I think that I just came across on Instagram. So sometimes the Instagram algorithm works in my favor and it brings me these amazing pattern designers that are just making things that are absolutely my style, and that's what I had with You Makes. I think she's also based in the Netherlands, which is really nice to, you know, support a fellow Dutchie. And I decided to make this cardigan. It was also a very quick project. I think I made this probably in 2 or 3 weeks. Definitely hyper focused on this as I usually do. And it's also a really fun pattern because you can make this with any yarn and in any size that you want to, based on a little gauge swatch that you do. So I made this with a 4mm crochet hook, and then I did it with Novida Merino 4-ply, which is a non-superwash fingering weight yarn. And then held it together with the long yarn Zen, which is a lace weight yarn that is kind of like a mohair alternative because it's mostly alpaca based, I think. And I did have that yarn in my stash for quite a while because I got it for my 24th birthday, which was not last year, but the year before that. So I'm quite pleased that I finally made something with it, and also I just didn't want it to be my own design because it's very pink, and I already have a pink Tallulah texture cardigan on my Ravelry page, so I don't know, I just tend to think like that when I have already a pink cardigan on my Ravelry page, that I don't want in it another pink cardigan because the colors are very similar. So this just worked out perfectly. So it has this shell stitch, which is also why it's called the Shell Cardigan. And I made it with a beautiful puff sleeve, which is also what they have in the pattern. The only adjustment that I did from the pattern is that I added another row of decreases here, because if I only did 1 row like they have in the pattern, then the cuff would be too big. And then other than that, I just followed the pattern. And also on the front, I have these really beautiful gold buttons that I got at the fabric store that I work at. My colleagues picked them out for me because I cannot choose buttons for the life of me. So I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I have already worn this a bunch of times because I just think crochet pieces for some reason are just perfect for spring and summer season. And this with like a floral dress is just, to me, like the perfect summer outfit. So I'm super happy with this, and I'm actually already looking at what I want to make next from her. I'm just obsessed with all of her patterns, honestly, and I just think crochet is a lot of fun right now and a really nice change from knitting, which for me is usually work related. And then the final finished object that I have is this little bubble pouch, and I'm sorry if you can hear it rattling, but that's because I put all of my nail polishes in here. So that is currently what this is being used for. This I didn't use a pattern for, I just self-drafted this because there are a couple of video tutorials out there, but I feel like they can be improved. And I don't mean that in a mean way, I just think sometimes when you see something, you think, oh, I can not do this better, but I want to put my own spin to this, basically is what I'm trying to say. So that is what I'm going to be doing with this very popular viral Bobble Pouch pattern. And I made this with a 4mm hook with the drop Nepal because I wanted to use a thicker yarn, so it created more of a thick fabric as well. And then I added a little metal zipper, and I also put a lining in it, which I will also show you. Zipper is not the smoothest for some reason. So yeah, we have a really cute seersucker cotton lining, and then as you can see, all of my nail polishes that I have. And these bags are just really cute. Like, I understand why they are viral, because just to have this on your desk, it's just really cute and beautiful. And I think this would also be just a really cute gift to, give to someone. So here we have the sewing finished object. So this is the Homebody Quilted Jacket by Matchy Matchy Sewing Club. This is, as you can see, a really beautiful oversized quilted jacket. And what really spoke to me about this pattern in particular is that it has possibility to match fabrics together, which I just think is really fun. I think Matchy Matchy Sewing Club really does that very often in their patterns, which is why I really love them as well. So I decided to make kind of like a sage green moment with this jacket. So we have the pinstripe with the solid fabric and also that bright floral and the matching brown bias tape. Then for the lining, this is completely gingham with polka dots because I just had that on hand, so I just decided to use it. I didn't really think about the fact that it is visible at the bottom when you're wearing it, but I don't think it's the worst match. Like, it's not the best match either. Like, it's fine. It works. It does the job basically. But I'm super happy with how this jacket turned out. Then I also think this jacket is very oversized, so I'm wearing the size extra small, and I'm definitely like a true size extra small. So I do think that you have to size down if you want to make it. Other than that, it's a great pattern. Their instructions are always really beautiful, like very detailed, and yeah, it's definitely a winner in my book. This is the only thing that I made sewing wise because it just took a lot of time already to quilt all of these pieces and put it all together. But it's definitely one of my most prized possessions or sewing objects right now, and I cannot wait to make another one. Then next up we have some works in progress. The first work in progress that I have is something that has been in the works for a very long time. I would have loved if it was finished already, but I've just completely lost steam on this project. I'm honestly still impressed with myself that I got this far, because if this was not a pattern design, I probably would have abandoned this project quite a long time ago. And not because it's not nice, it's just that sometimes you're really in the midst of a project and you just have so much excitement and then it just goes very smoothly. But for me personally, when I work on something and then I abandon it for months and I don't look at it, I just lose my excitement over it, even though it's a nice project. So this is the Stella Sun Bag. So this is a crochet and knitting hybrid pattern. So the granny squares here are of course crochet, and then the panels next to it are knitted. And as you can see, I have assembled everything together. So we have a front and a back together with these little tabs for the strap. And I did already put a lining in this bag, which was definitely a hassle, and it may or may have not taken me 3 tries to get it right. But in the end I did it, but it did involve a lot of swear words. So here's how that looks. This is just a plain cotton lining, nothing really special, but it does the job. So the only thing that I have left to do for this bag is to make a strap. But yeah, eventually this bag should be finished, because this is going to be like my next pattern that I'm going to put out for test knitting or test crocheting. So it better be finished basically. So this bag was knitted on 3.5mm needles, and for the crochet part I also used 3.5mm crochet hook. And the yarn for this is super fun. So I'm using a mercerized cotton by Katja, which is Capri. So it's a fingering weight mercerized cotton yarn in this white cream color. And I'm holding it together with a hand-dyed superwash fingering weight merino yarn, which is not really a yarn combination that you see very often, I think, especially for a summer item. But it created a really nice fabric. The mercerized cotton, I think, is especially really great if you want to make something for the summer that is a little bit more structured, like a bag, for example. And I just think the colors combining together in this fabric is really beautiful. And this is also a really nice way to be able to use one skein of hand-dyed finger weight yarn, because as you can see, I still have quite a lot left and I only need to do the strap, so I'm probably going to have leftovers. So if you do have like one of those odd skeins of yarn and you want to do something special with it, then I think this is a really nice project. Then the next work in progress that I have is probably the only real knitting work in progress that I have right now, which is kind of crazy. I have just been trying to finish a lot of things because there are a lot of things that I want to cast on, and I kind of felt guilty having all of those lingering whips. They were holding me back. So this is the only real work in progress that I still have for knitting. which is the Anemone sweater by Knitting for Olive. And me and this sweater have a funny history because I did talk about wanting to knit this probably in my plans for 2025 video, but then I also shared it in probably previous podcast that I wanted to make this with my advent, which this is not my advent, spoiler alert. But the funny thing about this project and I is that I frogged this project I think 3 times. So I knit the ribbing, then I removed it from my needles, started frogging it, and then was like, well, do I really want to frog this? Because I hate knitting ribbing and maybe I do want to knit this sweater because I just think it's so gorgeous and I have the yarn for it. And the main yarn that I'm using is also Drops Fiesta in like a beige color, and I don't know what else I would knit with this color because this color, it's beautiful combined with other colors, but just on itself, I just don't think it's for me. So it felt like it was for this project or nothing at all. So then I put it back on the needles and then I wanted to frog it again because I hadn't touched it in weeks or months or however long it had been. Then suddenly me and this yarn, we looked at each other again and then I was like, we gotta work it out because or else I'm gonna have to sell you. So I decided to just knit it and I made a little bit of a different color scheme than I had originally planned. So right now I'm working with 5 different colors for the flowers. And as you can see, I have already finished the first 2. So this is how it's looking so far. So this is knit with 3.5mm needles for the ribbing. Then the rest here is knit on 4mm needles. And something to note about this pattern is that it's a drop shoulder design. It's also knit bottom up. So there is going to be a part in this pattern where I'm going to do color work flat for the first time, which I'm not looking forward to. Then there's also 1 row in each flower motif where you are doing 3-stranded color work, which I didn't really expect for some reason. I thought everything would just be 2-stranded color work. Don't love doing 3 strands of color work, but I'm just going with it. And there are also quite long floats, which I am not catching because I want to have fun with this project because this is like my personal knitting project and I don't want to be catching floats basically. And I know that maybe I'm going to regret that later on, but right now I'm just having a good time. So here you can see that I'm not catching floats, especially with the one on the bottom. It's like 9 stitches long and I'm not catching it. I'm just leaving it there and hoping for the best. So as you can see, the main yarn was the Drops Fiesta. Then for the flowers, I'm using long yarns Merino Baby 200, I think, held together with the long yarns Alpaca Super Light, which is one of my favorite mohair alternatives. But I think they are discontinuing it and replacing it by the long yarn Zen, which I spoke about for my shell cardigan. The long yarn Zen has silk in it and the Alpaca Super Light doesn't. And I just think it's nicer without the silk. Of course, it has less shine, but I think the silk sometimes can be a little bit scratchy, like also in mohair yarns. So that is a bummer. Then the first flower that you saw is also that same yarn. So I have that here. And then the blue one is actually Knitting for Olive Merino, held together with their soft silk mohair in the color Dusty Dove Blue. And then for the other colors, there are going to be a lot of pink. So we have more Knitting for Olive, then a slightly different color, again of Knitting for Olive. So I'm hoping that all of these are going to have enough contrast. I did place them already in a photo. And I think when they have something between them, then there is enough contrast. So these are the pinks that are going in the sweater. Then we have the blue, just to bring in some blue, because I have been feeling very blue lately. And not literally, but I've been liking the color. And then I'm also using this color, just to bring in some browns or like something a little bit more neutral. So I'm hoping that's going to be a nice color combination. I do think this project honestly is a little bit slow, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm just saying that it's going to be a while probably before I finish this. But I'm also really enjoying the process right now, and I just think seeing the flowers work up is really beautiful and exciting. It's also a little bit addicting because you are kind of working stripes, so every time you finish a flower motif you kind of want to just continue on to the next one, which is always really nice. So I'm really enjoying that process, and also that it's just for me and my pleasure, so there's no rush to finish it and we'll just see when it's done. And then the final work in progress that I have for this video is another crochet bag, again for a video tutorial. So this is going to be a striped bag with a ruffle on the side. This is going to be a little bit of a bigger bag, so more like a tote bag. So I will just show you what I have so far. So it's going to have a front and a back, of course. So this is just, well, the front or the back. And this is how it looks. So this is made with 2 strands of cotton yarn held together. This is the Scheepjes Cotton 8, which is, I think, also a fingering or a cotton weight yarn. 50 grams has about 170 meters. So I'm holding that together on a 4mm hook. And I do think this is one of the softest cottons as well. For some reason, Scheepjes, their cotton yarns are really soft. And I really love this color combination. Like, I don't know, it's just really fun right now. And now I do have some really fun acquisitions to show you as well. So the first thing that I have acquired is this new book, which is 52 weeks of scrap yarn. So this is Lane, their newest 52 weeks of something book. And this is a really beautiful book because this is definitely, I think, in my opinion, something that the knitting community needed, because we're all waiting what are we going to do with this leftover ball of yarn or just like those little tiny scraps, and this book is just designed for that. And 52 projects, this is going to last you basically your entire life probably. And there are a lot of beautiful projects in this book. And it actually also has some crochet projects. So for example, this crochet scarf I think is very beautiful and definitely something that I would love to make. And then another project that I really like is actually this vest. And I actually quite like this because I designed this. So that's a nice surprise. This is a secret project that I was working on last year. And it's kind of crazy to see my own name in a book. And yeah, I don't know how to feel about that. And to be honest, these pictures, if you know me, these pictures are not really my vibe. I don't think the pictures really do the design justice, just being completely honest here. So I am going to show you design now in a little bit more detail because I did receive it back. So then you can see what I designed for the book. That is designed for, well, like leftover balls of yarn basically was my inspiration. And then also for buttons. Because if you know me, you know I'm a big button collector, especially vintage buttons. And sometimes in a thrift store you just find those odd buttons, or you have a leftover button yourself, or you have a little trinket dish from your grandma with beautiful vintage buttons. This is designed to use a bunch of different buttons together and just create a beautiful and scrappy project. So I'm going to show you the sample in real life. So this is the Piper patchwork vest, because it's knit in a very patchwork style fashion. So first of all, we have a European drop shoulder construction in the back with a linen stitch, which the linen stitch is a little bit difficult to knit. Like not difficult per se, but the tension on linen stitch, if you have knit that before, is usually very tight. So that's the only thing in this pattern that I would say you have to be a little bit mindful of. And then after that, it goes into a lot of beautiful knit and purl textures. So here we have one with slip stitches, we have some kind of seed stitch, then this one with ridges. Here we have with yarn overs, and then we have a broken rib on the bottom. And then the front, we have a really unique detail as well, because we have these really big linen stitch button plackets, which are knit kind of like button bands or like double knit button bands in this manner, but also with decreases and like a bunch of different shaping, etc. And it's definitely something that I have not seen done before, and I just think it created a really unique touch. And then of course you can see all of the buttons that I used, which I just think is super awesome. And my favorite one, of course, is the little flower button, because that is just too cute. I kind of forgot what needle I knit this with, but I think almost all of the textures are knit on 4mm needles, except for the linen stitch, which is knit on 5mm needles. So for the yarn you can use DK or worsted weight yarns. And I just love this vest. And I think it's very beautiful. Very happy to be published in a book. Really exciting. And so when Lane was delivering this book, they asked me if I wanted to have anything else, which I couldn't say no to, because they have just released their first crochet issue. And as you can tell, I'm in my crochet era. So I had to have this book because I just fell in love with a lot of the designs that are in here. So this is not sponsored, this is purchased with my own money. And this is Lane Let's Crochet. And just look at that first design on the front page. Like, that is something that I would just cast on right away. That is absolutely gorgeous. But there are like a lot of other projects. I don't think, like maybe there was one in this book that I thought that I wouldn't make. And everything else I would make, like just like a little bag like this. Beautiful. The top that they have above there is also very beautiful. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, this sweater, I also forgot. This sweater completely made with mohair. Absolutely gorgeous. I really want to make that. And I also really love this one as a summer top, just like they have worn it here. And I also thought about making this one to use as a project bag. And yeah, as you can see, I'm a little bit obsessed with crochet right now. So this book is coming at the perfect time. I am going to look through my stash and see if I have any yarn, maybe to make this top that is in the front, because it is screaming my name right now. And then I do have two yarn acquisitions that I just quickly wanted to show you as well, because the colors are just too beautiful. So I wanted to show you some plans that I have in the future. Now that I have finished so many works in progress, I can cast on something very soon. So first of all, I'm going to design a fitted cardigan, which I've never done before. Like all of my cardigans and most of my designs are a little bit more oversized, but I want to design something that is like very fitted and a little bit preppy. So butter yellow, because I've been influenced. This is the Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. I'm going to hold it together with the Drops Snort. You know, me and Drops yarns, we go way back and it's one of my favorite yarn brands. So honestly, when I want yarn, I tend to look on Drops, their website. And I think this is going to be a really beautiful color combination because this one is a little bit lighter. This is a bit darker and I think it's going to be quite nice. And probably a little bit of a tighter gauge because I have used a very similar yarn combination like this before on 4.5mm needles, which was my Fiona Flower sweater. And I think I'm gonna do 4mm needles for this design. And then I have another cardigan that I would love to make, which is going to be my first crochet cardigan design. So we have the Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk again, because I had this in stash. And then this one is a new acquisition. So this is again the Scheepjes Cotton 8 in this really beautiful baby blue color. Then I did make a bunch of swatches to just see, like, to find the right stitch that I wanted to do. And I'm going to make something that has some kind of scalloped edge at the bottom and also on the sleeve, because I just think that's a very cute detail. And together, so it created like this marl texture. And I just think this is very cute. And also with those little scallops, I just think this could be a very nice cardigan to have that on the bottom and like on the sleeve, like this basically. I don't know, that's what I'm thinking about. And I think it will also be fun to have a crochet project that is a design, whilst also working on knitwear designs. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything. So those were all of the things that I had to show you for this video. I know it was a little bit crazy. And I do think I'm only going to make a knitting podcast once a month. So probably the next one is also going to be maybe a little bit crazy with a bunch of finished objects and works in progress. But that is what works really well for me timing wise right now, because I'm also working on other video ideas that just happen to take a little bit more time. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I guess we can do like 5 minutes of knit and chat, because I keep thinking about wanting to do a knit and chat, but then I keep forgetting it. And my camera is a little bit overheating, so let's see how far we can make it with the heat that it's currently experiencing. But I just wanted to, yeah, just chat a little bit with how I'm doing. I'm actually doing pretty well. I mean, I have been honestly a little bit stressed lately because I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks. I'm going to London to visit my sister and I'm going with family, so it's going to be a girls trip together with my grandma, my cousin, and then also my aunt. Super exciting and really fun, but I'm also really nervous because if you have been here on my channel before, you know that a big reason, or actually probably the reason why I started this YouTube channel, is because I have pretty bad anxiety. So I'm honestly scared. And I have been pretty stressed out about it because I have anxiety with a lot of different aspects in my life. But a big one is that I am a little bit claustrophobic. So the tunnel is like giving me a lot of anxiety, but also being in a train for 4 hours is giving me anxiety. And then I'm also afraid of getting sick whilst I'm not at home. And then I just think about that I'm gonna get food poisoning on my way back, and then I'm stuck in London, and then, or I'm like getting sick everywhere. That's like how my mind works for some reason, so I'm just freaking myself out. And yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but I'm just trying to make my way through it because there's nothing really else that you can do. And with anxiety, sadly, I know that the only way to really get rid of it is to experience those things and to teach your body or your mind that there's nothing scary about the situation, and it's basically just your nervous system like going crazy. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to just face my fears, but I'm not looking forward to it because I just have all worst case scenarios in my mind. Then other than that, what I'm working on right now, yeah, I'm working on some crochet kits with my boyfriend. So it's really nice that we're doing something together, like starting a new business. We thought about making a whole new business with this, but we're gonna keep it with the Mippy, the label thing, because I already have this going on. So why not like combine it and just use the same Etsy, etc. Because I've already built this, so it doesn't really seem or like make sense to start all over again. But I am going to keep the talk about that to a minimum because I never really intended this space to be like advertisement or trying to sell you something. Like I always just wanted this space to be like a positive and fun space for me to just share what I'm working on and what I'm making, and to share in my creativity, especially because I never planned for this to even be like a part of my job, basically. So I really hope that you'd still enjoy this space despite me sometimes sharing things, because this is part of my job, but then it's also my hobby. So it can get a little bit difficult when those lines are kind of blurred. It's also, like I said, with knitting, that knitting is also sometimes part of my job. And sometimes I don't want to knit on something because it's work related. Sometimes I just want to knit for myself. So that's also why I'm knitting on the Anemone sweater, because I do think it's quite important to keep a work-life balance, even though I'm very bad at it, to be honest. I think right now I work probably 6 days in a week, and probably I also do some work on the 7th day. So I'm just working all of the time. And so I wouldn't call myself a workaholic, but I'm definitely leaning towards being a little bit of a workaholic, which is very unhealthy for me. And I also can just feel that my body is under a lot of pressure and stress. And I think a lot of people are going to think, well, why are you so stressed? Like, you're just making like social media content and you're just knitting and crocheting all day. But I just put a lot of pressure on myself to perform and to have everything do well. So I want to sell a lot of patterns, and I want my videos to go viral, and I want to make a lot of money and be successful. And I know that probably sounds really stupid and maybe a little bit superficial, but I just want to advance in life and to not live in a studio apartment anymore and to get my driver license. And that's, I think, why I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, because the days or like life is a little bit hard right now. Like, not for me, but in general for a lot of people. Like, living and life and finances are at a really tough spot for a lot of people. And that's why I think I also just put a lot of pressure on myself. So yeah, not to get too deep or anything, but I just wanted to chat and talk a little bit about how I'm doing. So that is also why you're seeing less of me here, because I used to make a video every single week, but that just honestly got a little bit exhausting. Also, to always have to come up with new ideas, etc. And right now I think I'm more creatively inspired by the videos that I'm doing. So I have a little bit of an agenda for the upcoming months, and just the video ideas that I'm working on are a lot more exciting to me than the videos that I was doing. So I'm not going to make a video where I'm just sharing like a bunch of patterns every single month like I used to, but I'm just creating more and sharing that and challenging myself to be more creative in this way. So I really hope that you enjoy everything that I'm coming up with, and also that you will stick with me whilst I kind of figure everything out. And I do really appreciate everyone that is watching these videos and that has subscribed and is always commenting. I really appreciate it. I know I don't always respond to everything, but I just don't have the hours in a day that it takes sometimes to respond to everything. Also, like mental capacity, sometimes I just feel a little bit drained from having to reply to social things. Like, not YouTube comments necessarily, but also in my personal life. I don't know, sometimes I think I might just have ADHD or something like that. I think those were all of the things that I wanted to chat about, because that is what has been on my mind lately and what is happening in my personal life. And for now, I wish you all a very happy day, happy knitting, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!